But the AI is something different and something special. And the rate of innovation, the rate of change is almost incomprehensible.
The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. It is only intended to provide education about the financial industry. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your financial advisor prior to investing. Any past performance discussed during this program is no guarantee of future results. Any indices referenced for comparison are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. Any references to performance of securities are thought to be materially accurate and actual performance may differ. As always, please remember investing involves risk and possible loss of principal capital. Please seek advice from a licensed professional.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining us for another installment of our of our interview session. And this one we've been talking about for a while. It's taken a while for us to work our schedules out. It's like two ships passing each other in the night here. But without further ado, my good friend Brad Sarsfield is here to talk to us about all things AI. And so why don't we start off? I obviously know your backstory, but start off, where you work, what you do, and kind of how you got in the field.
Sure thing, Zach. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to talk about AI. I live and breathe this every day. I've been at Microsoft for 23 years, coming up on 24. And I've seen some major shifts, major industry shifts, including, this thing we call the internet, to cloud computing. And now I think what we're rolling into, which is the AI revolution. So I run a team at Microsoft where we use AI to protect and defend digital assets for Microsoft and our customers. We are under constant threat attack from nation state actors, the usual suspects of North Korea, Iran, Russia, China, every day. And AI is accelerating that threat. And we're using AI to defend Microsoft. So, yeah. No,
it's pretty wild. How long? So wanted to get into kind of the history and the background of AI and kind of lay out the facts for the folks. One of the goals of the show from the very beginning was to attack these really complex topics and make it kind of digestible for folks.
Right.
So the first forms of AI, the way that we've interacted or that consumers have interacted with now are LLMs. How long have you guys been using AI applications on the security side? And is that different? Are we using LLMs on the security side, or is that kind of a different type of AI?
It is all LLM. LLMs are so new, and relatively speaking, in the computing history. If you rewind, even 5 years ago, this concept of AI was kind of this quirky science thing that computer nerds talked about. But there was a set of remarkable breakthroughs that happened, where they realized that LLMs and those large language models, there was this realization of two things. One was that predictive math and predictive algorithms work, and that's great on its own. But then second, that you can represent pretty much anything as a language. So, I spent the better part of a decade helping build virtual reality and augmented reality devices. And on those devices, we have things that track your hands. We have things that track your head. We have things that know where you're looking at. Each one, or even when you're talking to your phone and doing voice recognition, all of those were separate, different scientific endeavors. But something happened about 4 years ago, where now we realized that everything can be represented as a language. And so these large language models don't just work for text. This is why these large language models also work for video and image generation, because that stream of ones and zeros that make up that image or make up that video is just another language. And that's why we're seeing the breakthroughs across all science, medical, chemistry, computers, and computer science, which is just rocketed in the past even in the past year specifically. I think it's also important to understand not just the growth or the origin story of where this started just a few years ago, but how fast and how exponential, or even greater than exponential, this is going. Look, if you take a look at these industry shifts, the shift for the shift to go online. Everyone, for those old enough to remember the information superhighway, and we can go shopping on there. And it was this quirky little thing that took and now is permeated into every aspect of our lives. Right? I don't even know, our kids' school football schedule unless I go on the internet. Then came, this pretty rapid shift to the cloud. But the AI is something different and something special. And the rate of innovation, the rate of change is almost incomprehensible. Look, if you rewind a little over a year ago, AI was able to hit, it scored a 90% on the bar exam. That's pretty impressive. Now, fast forward a couple months from that, and it was able to produce code for me like it was an intern. It was a helpful intern for me, right? Click stop a little bit more forward, which is probably 3 or 4 months ago, and it is now as good as any senior employee that I have. And today, it's outcoding everybody, which is phenomenal.
And that, just so people can keep this in context, if you think about like how long it took us to go from the first time you heard you got mail to where you were ordering something and getting it delivered the same day from Amazon, that was a 15, 16 year stretch, right?
Yeah.
The process that you just laid out, how long did that start from start to finish?
That was a little over a year. And there's a law. There used to be a law in computers that has been true since the 70s, which said every 18 months, computers get twice as fast. That's why the phone that you have in your pocket is 1,000,000 times more powerful than the computers that NASA used in the 60s. Right.
Why, Brad, I don't want to get off track here, but why was that? Why did that hold so true? I remember being fascinated by Moore's law the same way that I was fascinated by statistics, meaning like it just cracked me up how consistent it held true. Why was that? Was it pace of development? What was it?
It was, it was pace of development driven by Intel and AMD, right? And it was new technology, new ways of making silicon, how to shrink things, how to make things. It was just this, one of the things that I love to say is never bet against American innovation. Right. And that holds true for the Moore's law, and it also now holds true for what AI. Now, the best prevailing knowledge that we have over the last few years, we think that 18 months has now shrunk to about 4. So we see that, and that's a measure of intelligence and speed of how long it takes you to do a task. And that's essentially what it boils down to, what these LLMs are good at and what AI is good at. It lets you win time back. It shrinks time. That's really what it is, because it's on intelligence on demand. For the first time in human history, we now are able to manufacture intelligence. And this is why you'll hear, we hear about the infrastructure that's required to build this, and the capital expenditure that are going on across all of the hyperscalers, right? And this is why, we're a few $100 billion into a multi-trillion-dollar build out.
I wanted to stop that. I want to stop for a second right there, just so people understand the gravity of this. You're talking, and I've seen numbers, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're probably looking in the next 24 months of, just for U.S. companies, CapEx somewhere in the neighborhood of 10, 15, potentially even 20% of our entire GDP.
The numbers are astounding. Look, if you think about what it takes there to train these models, and then to what we call serve these models, for you to use it. So every time you ask a question to an LLM, you get a little time slice allocation on a GPU, on a graphical processor. These chips, you'll hear these AI chips. Now, these AI chips are special, right? These AI chips are, you think about it, they're the size of a microwave. These are not little tiny. These systems are big.
Oh,
they're expensive.
So when you buy an H1, it's an H1000, right?
H100 or H200. They're going to keep going.
That's the size of a microwave.
But yeah, the footprint that of this thing takes up is they're big, right?
Wow, I didn't know.
So
okay.
the in order to make GPT-5, which is a model that OpenAI just released, that took a data center about the size of New York City, Manhattan, to train and build. And then it's going to take another one about that same size to train, to serve that, so that you can ask questions. And so, back when I remember talking to you with the DeepSeek thing, when the DeepSeek shock and awe hit, it was saying, oh my goodness, we can improve the efficiency at which we train these models. And, to be honest, I think the market got that initial reaction wrong, because in actual fact, it just made it more efficient, which actually drives more demand. There are data centers right now that are being built in Texas that have 4,000 employees on site, and these are electricians and plumbers and construction folks that are stamping these things out. And in the next 5 years, we're going from, right now, the U.S. data center consumption is about 2% of our power consumption. That's going to bump up in the next 5 years to 10%. It's driving 20% of the overall growth for energy, which I believe is actually our bottleneck right now, right? And this is why you're seeing companies like Microsoft and Google invest in building nuclear power, and finding whatever power that they can get to fuel these things, right? We're seeing TSMC come on shore and build chips for NVIDIA here locally.
Are they able to build here locally? And I'm
in U.S. Yeah.
About the Glendale. We're talking about the Glendale plant, right? That
yeah.
went down there in Arizona. Are they able to build the top-notch H100s there yet?
I'm not sure what stage they're at, but I know that that's their intention. Is that we have to have a U.S. based production of these AI, what are called AI factories, right? So the data centers are the 2010s, 2015, 2020 type thing, and a data center is where we put the internet, where we serve the internet through the web. And it's a storage place. It's a data center. But these new systems we think of as, and the new data centers, we think of them as AI factories. They are manufacturing intelligence. And that takes an order of magnitude more computer chips and more power, right? We had Elon Musk come out the other week to say, in the next 5 years, I think about 50 million H100s would be about right for our company. Now multiply that across all of the hyperscalers. Now these chips get faster, they get more efficient, and you're like, well, why is this right? Because it seems that every dollar that is put into this infrastructure investment, they're getting $3 to $4 in return in terms of value out the other end, and that's why that is a race. It is a global race, not just in the U.S. but across the world. That's why we're seeing UAE. That's why we're seeing stuff come up in China. But I say thank goodness for that. The Chinese model that came out, thank goodness that was built on NVIDIA, not Huawei chips, because I think the reaction would have been way different.
Yeah. And I know what is, okay, so I don't want to get stuck here. I want to stay on. Well, there's just so many different parts. And just if people don't understand, or if people don't know this, whenever you and I get together, this is inevitably where we end up for probably hours at a time, to the annoyance of both of our wives, I'm sure. But when we're looking kind of at this landscape right now, how far away, I know China's made several overtures about their own progress they've made on the chip side. in my own mind, I'm handicapping that quite a bit because you and I both know, I think that there's with the broader population out there, there's a real lack of understanding about how intricate and how hard the production of these chips are. Do we have any indicators on where China's at in terms of their chip capability right now?
Huawei is working on chips. I think that when Trump relaxed the export restrictions, I think that's going to be, personally, I think that's a positive thing, because we want this, the NVIDIA chips, and the NVIDIA has this stronghold right now that ultimately will likely be broken in the long term. But they have the stronghold right now is all of the computer scientists, all of the people who are writing code on top of these chips are using the NVIDIA and the NVIDIA stack, their APIs. And that's why all of your data scientists, all of your AI researchers, everyone is using all of the common tools, generally work the best and most optimized. The interesting thing too is after these chips, the recent H100 chips, after that chip is released, the performance continues to improve and is now today 4 times more powerful than it was when it was launched originally, because of software improvements.
Okay, so I'm thinking of an analogy here, right?
All right.
So it is not more powerful because NVIDIA put out a different model, but it's sort of like if I took my car and went up and got it chipped, right?
You put new software in it, you changed the power curves, you did all these intricate little adjustments, and you were able to squeeze more out of it. And that's the name of the game.
And that's the part. This is all over AI, right? This is the part of it. There's several different things I want people to understand. What I think is going to catch people so off guard is that dynamic, meaning it's the first technology that we've ever created that is creating better and improvements to existing technology while we're creating it, right? Like
Yes.
It's turning around and creating after we create it. And so that speed of innovation, it is going to be unlike anything we've ever seen. And it already is, correct? I mean, that's not hyperbolic, right?
No, absolutely. This right now, I think software engineering and people who write computer code is leading the way. It is a massive accelerant to the capabilities. That one of the things that our CEO Satya Nadella likes to say is, what would you do if intelligence was free? Right? When you can automate, when you can use AI to shrink time. And I mentioned that at the top of the show. It really is about winning time back. I know that there can be a lot of fear of change and disruption, and this is absolutely a disruptive technology. But I don't think that AI is coming for your job. I don't think personally that you should be afraid that you are going to be replaced by AI. What I would be afraid of is that you'll be replaced by the person who is using AI, because the people that are using AI right now are getting things done faster and more complete. I have actually right now on my other monitor, I have an AI that's writing code while we're talking. I've given it a task, and it's off and it's spinning, and it's frankly doing what would take an employee of mine maybe 2 or 3 days, and it will accomplish in 15, 20 minutes. It's
I remember,
phenomenal.
and just so people get this, I remember you were at my place on 4th of July, and you pulled out your phone, and you're working on something. I go, "What are you doing?" And you go, "Oh, I'm talking to the AI." Right? And I go, "Well, what are you telling it?" And you go, "Well, it did what I asked it to do, but it needs to keep going. It's not done yet." And so you told it, "Keep going." And you start laughing and you go, "That's what I always tell it to do. Keep going," right?
Keep going.
But it was just crazy because you were communicating with it like you would have an employee that was working on a task. But you and I are at a barbecue on the 4th of July, and it's just hammering away, right? Yeah. We're out of the office, and it's pounding nails. It's still putting in work.
And that's really what what is coming next. A lot of people have used ChatGPT, and you have a conversation with it. And this is what we call conversational AI, where you ask questions, it gives you a response. You ask it another question, you give it a response. This new form is called agentic AI. They're called AI agents. And that's something that I can give it a task, and it can go off and iterate. Or even it can spin up its own sub agents. So I have what I've found work very well is I have an agent that is an author, and I have an agent that's a reviewer. So I have an agent that writes something, and I have an agent that reviews it. And they go back and forth, and they talk to each other in English, and end up producing something, and they present it back and say, well, what do you think of this? And I can say, well, why don't you change these things? I kind of want this tone, right? And it does it, and it goes off and it works. Now, the implications of that, what we call a turn, every time the AI thinks about something and it moves one step at a time through the problem, we're burning GPUs. We are, and so this demand is frankly insatiable with this model.
Which honestly, I've heard a lot of people kind of wringing their hands about it, but to me, I see a real silver lining to that, because I think that energy demand is going to make us make decisions that we've been putting off, and that for instance, like you talked about nuclear. It's pretty clear to any serious actor, right? The way you're going to meet this supply without, filling the sky with a bunch of garbage is through nuclear, right? And I don't know, had we come to that conclusion, had this AI thing not come around, right? In my opinion, it was always the answer going forward. Everybody's like, we need a, energy revolution. Like, we had one. It's here, right? But like so many other things, any step forward we've ever seen technologically, there's always these, and there's costs too, right? There's costs too, but there's always these ancillary benefits that nobody sees. And I'm hoping that on the energy side of it, and it looks very, very positive at this point, that it's going to force our hands to do kind of the right thing. For instance, I think this would be another, had this situation been around 2.5, 3 years ago, the way it is now, Germany may not have shut down their nuclear facility, right? Like, right. You know what I mean? Sometimes we need to be prodded along to make the right decisions.
And, to your point about China earlier on, China is stamping out, these nuclear power plants at record pace, right? They are much less unencumbered by regulatory reasons. But, I'm a firm believer in American ingenuity and American intelligence. And I think that the model that we have here is a phenomenal model for, the capitalistic model will prevail.
Okay, little side tangent here, and then I want to get back to kind of the history of LLMs when you first heard of them, kind of the origin story there. Yeah. But really quickly, and don't want to force you into a political place, but you have a very unique perspective, and it's one of these debates that to me is unfortunate that it's turned political, because I think it's a real issue. I think it's a real topic. And I think it kind of gets at the soul of who our country is and where we're headed. But what is your take on so much of this angst around HB1 visas? And from inside the tech world, and I'll just kind of lay this out. Sure. There's two schools of thought, and I'm personally sympathetic to both, which is A, prioritize the American worker. We have enough talent here. But then also B, that's not what got us here. That's not what being American is. Right. We were an open door to the best and brightest everywhere in the world. So I have sympathy regarding opening up the floodgates for otherwise what would be American jobs. But I also have a ton of sympathy for, America is the ultimate meritocracy, right? It is. The best and brightest. And we want to stay the magnet for the best and brightest. So do we need, from your perspective, Do we need to keep those doors open and keep bringing in that talent from international markets?
So look, I have a very unique perspective on this. Zach, I'm not sure if you're aware, but 15 or 23 years ago, I came into the country on a TN visa from Canada. I'm originally from Canada. And then I went through the H-1B visa program. And I met my lovely wife, and then I became a citizen that way. But so I have a view, at least, on that. So what I don't like is when the H-1B visas are used by some companies to drive down wages to a lowest common denominator. But I do like the exceptional, the ability to attract and retain exceptional scientists, exceptional people who are exceptional in their field, the people that we want to attract. For example, one of my coworkers grew up in the area that is where the DeepSeek company has been founded. It is that company was almost you can think of it as a planned company from the best and the brightest area. This is like their area that in China where you can think they have multiple Harvards and Princetons and MITs, and they will take the top of the cream of the crop and have those people. We want to be able to bring those.
Was the government involved in creating that DeepSeek team, or was it purely driven by?
I don't know. I don't know. Honestly,
it kind of sounds like the AI version of Long-Term Capital. I don't know if you're familiar with that story, but no. Long-Term Capital was this famous hedge fund that was built by the greatest academic minds and greatest economists in the world. They had a great 2.5-year run and then almost blew up the world, right? So. And brilliant guys, but where reality runs into theory, right?
Yeah. We see it right now, a talent war for AI scientists and AI engineers brewing across the industry, and it's tumultuous and it's almost tabloid-like from sitting on the inside looking at how Meta's throwing literally hundreds of millions of dollars at 20-year-olds. Or 20-something-year-olds, which is just unbelievable. And these folks are like they're treated like sports superstars because of their skill set is so valuable right now, and it's such a tight race, and the timelines are so accelerated. I mean, the thing that I want everybody to realize is that we are standing on the edge of superhuman intelligence. When I talked about that intelligence acceleration, and I talked about the AI passing the bar exam a year ago, just a few weeks ago, the AI now has an IQ the best AI model now has an IQ equivalent of 156, which is about the equivalent of 1 in 14,000 humans that it's smarter than. And it's not stopping. That's where we are today. So where we will be in 4 months from now or 6 months from now, we may not double that, but we are accelerating the pace of how that is ramping.
Okay, so back to that origin story. Because AI to me 5 years ago sort of feels like, and this may be a bad analogy, but just from my perception from the outside looking in, kind of feels like what quantum computing is today. Right. It's an idea. Right. We believe it's possible. It's somewhat tangible, but we're certainly not there yet. We're stuck somewhere in between being able to compute quantum, via quantum computing and not, but it's kind of hard to know where you are. AI felt like that to me prior to ChatGPT showing up on the scene. So kind of give us the origin story, including what led us to LLMs and the first time you heard that term.
All right. So this would be a few years ago. I mean, I've been in the space of building algorithms that do human and environmental understanding with mixed reality. So we're on this cutting edge research team building what we think is trying to be next. And we hear about, there's this new predictive algorithm that came out of Google. That's pretty interesting. And then, the ChatGPT was launched, and we have these generative models. Now, maybe if I could take a second to describe how these work, how these actually, like, what actually is this? This is not a sentient thing that's kind of running in the back. The AI exists for the duration of your question to answer your question with a mathematical formula. At the end of the day, the way I like to describe it, the world's simplest model, if you say, hello, my name is Brad, I can build a model that would predict that if I say, hello, my name is, the next word would be Brad. And that's all LLMs are, is they're predicting what the next thing is, or the next word is. You'll hear the word in called tokens. And you can think of generally that as a word or a part of a word. And what they're doing is predicting what is next. And that was something incredibly novel, incredibly, it seems very simple, but the mathematical models behind it are incredibly complex. And the compute requirements also, 5 years ago, were not in place. Right. So the advent of better GPUs and the advent of better models, but we have these. The first set were gimmicky, right? So it went from hokey, like, I don't know if we can do this, to okay, this is a little bit gimmicky, and it's kind of bad. It doesn't really work. To I see where this is going. This is going to help me. To now where this is a indispensable tool. And I think in the past year, I've gone from a year ago where I was using it every day. I was using it. I could definitely say I'm a daily user of AI. And over the past year, it's ramped where I'm using it all the time. And I'm using it every day, all the time. And it's even working off hours when I'm not working. Right.
So some of you said that I got to delve into, because I've thought about it, but not quite in those terms before. As a coder, because and you've got a fascinating origin story. You grew up in an extraordinary rural area, mm-hmm. right? Out in the sticks.
Yes.
But idyllic too, right? The beautiful area.
It's great. Farm country, salt of the earth people, right?
There you go, man. That's right. Up there in the 51st state, right? So, I'm sure that made all the folks at home real happy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they love that.
The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. Any references to performance of securities are thought to be materially accurate, and actual performance may differ. You were coding. When you think about, so my non-coding mind, you go from designing codes to do a function, to do a task, right? Mm-hmm. To do the same thing every time, to where now you're designing code that, again, to the layperson, there's another level involved, because this has got to predict. It's actually got to do something that we're not giving it and that we have not told it exactly how to do it. So now it has to think. But again, from a layperson's, I go, there's another level of coding in there. That's not just another level, right? That had to be the complexity of that jump, where we go from designing code that does a specific task,
yes, to
a code that's doing this. That's not another level, right? That's clearing a chasm 5 miles wide, right?
It is. Here's the reality. I had my daughter was in one of these coding camps, and she would go to this center every I think it was 3 times a week, and she was learning how to code. And about a year ago, we just kind of pulled her out, because I tell you right now, everybody in the world now can code, because the most prevalent coding language is not C# or C++ or any of these esoteric computer nerd things. The programming language of today is English. So another thought, because now I'm thinking about it, it's very interesting that you're
I mean, what a place to be as far as your career, right? Talk about being at the tip of the spear, but you're also doing it with a company that's fascinating as well, because Microsoft tackled a new innovation like this before.
Yes.
And everybody was focused on the power of compute. And Microsoft's attitude was, well, that's only as good as you can talk to the compute, right? You can deal with it. Thus the creation of Windows, right?
Yeah.
So there've got to be companies focusing on that, right? Creating that ability for us to interface with AI, I would think is going to be, that's kind of like the next iteration of a Windows, right?
Yes. Yeah. The how you interact with AI, today is done. You can talk to AI. You can type AI. It's a language-based interface where you are asking questions, you are instructing, you are providing guidance. That is dramatically different than the existing applications. How we have laid out Windows, how we've laid out SaaS-based applications, the modality and how you interact is changing. Those rules are still being written. We're still figuring out as an industry what works and what doesn't work. And even then, because we've even in the past few months, we've moved from conversational based. I ask a question, it gives me a response. I ask another question, it gives me a response. To now we instructing it and managing it, and it works on its own, then it comes back to us. These are new experience paradigms that we have to go and discover how to build, right? And I back to your point on my origin story. I for whatever reason, my parents were elementary school teachers, and by the grace of God, my father decided one day to spend $200, which was a ton of money back in the 80s, on a VIC-20 computer that I had to write. And at the time we lived in the middle of nowhere. We had two channels, and one of them was French, and there was nothing ever on TV, so I had to make my own entertainment. And so they gave me this computer thing, and it came with a book on how to make it do something, and even save the programs on a cassette tape. And that was how and then I never stopped. And then in Canada, at some point the education system decided to make sure that there was a computer in every classroom. And I'd be the guy sitting in the back. And I remember in the sixth grade was the first time they had an Apple IIe in the back of the classroom. My teacher let me sit back there. But the phone I have in my pocket is now 1 million times faster and is 1 million times more capable. And now these GPU chips have just jumped that capability as well. Right.
So when was the first time you heard the term LLM? And was that and the way that I understand that, correct me if I'm wrong, that was basically Chat GPT's go at it, right? Effectively.
Yeah.
And then they just had great results, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I've heard of this probably 3 years ago. And we started seeing some of the research, and it was it had always been this, frankly, it was always kind of this kooky thing. It was this, sure, you can make artificial intelligence. No, because the traditional way that computers work is they do exactly what you tell them, one step at a time. And that's what coding is. Do A, then B, then C. If this, then do E. If that, do F. That's how it works. And this completely changed that. But it wasn't obvious right away. It wasn't obvious because it was still, okay, what is it doing? What is it doing? And it wasn't until a fun little story. I was working on a robotics project with one of those robot dogs, the Boston Dynamics robot dogs that walks around. And I had a research engineer and we did every year Microsoft has a hackathon, a 1 week program, 1 week long, where you can just work on whatever you want to dream up. And so we said, okay, and this was 2 years ago. We said, okay, let's put Chat GPT and this robot together. And so we were able to make it so that this robot had a speaker, it had a microphone, and we could talk to it. Say, what's your battery at? Oh, my battery's at 90%. What would you like me to do? I want you to walk forward 5 steps, and that really was that was an interesting moment for me. But more technically, what we realized,
you guys were able to develop that capability via ChatGPT in a week.
yes,
That's insane.
yeah.
That's insane.
And
in the past, if you added a voice, like how long did it take Apple to develop Siri? You know what I mean? Like
decades,
years.
Yeah, years, many years.
Talking to a dog in a week.
Yeah. The accelerant, and you know, I work in the security space, and this is frankly a frightening time. I don't want to be an alarmist, but the advent of these large language models and coding, while used for good, can also be used for nefarious purposes. Everybody gets spam email. You've seen spam email. But those in the past have traditionally been, I'm going to generate a spam email and I'm going to send it to 1 million people, and maybe a bunch of people are going to click on it, and I can try and convince them to get their credit card or whatever. That's how you know, a lot of the waste, fraud, and abuse based threats have been operating. But what these LLMs now have done is how it shrinks time and it shrinks cost. And so now you can have and build highly customized nation state tradecraft that would say, one of the examples that we've used is generate a targeted phishing campaign against this company with the express intent of defrauding their finance department. And it will generate customized per person based targeted attacks through email, through what we call spear phishing campaigns with malicious software that can evade detection. And this can be purchased for the low price of 25 cents by a 16-year-old. So what was used to be, nation state level investment with serious, government control from all of the governments, now is more accessible. So this adversarial AI is upon us, and we're seeing that.
Yeah, and it's a problem because it doesn't sleep. You were saying something about those phishing emails, and I was just sitting there thinking to myself, yeah, now you don't even need to, try to, you can be so much more inventive how you go. And then when they actually respond to the email, that AI can sit there and correspond back and forth too.
Yes.
Right? Like
we've seen, we've seen an instance where a candidate during a job interview used a fake avatar. We've seen an incident where
hold on. Was this like a Zoom interview?
A Zoom interview.
So they created a fake image of themselves.
Yes.
And how did it get discovered? Did it glitch or what?
Yeah, this was a few months ago. The technology is not it's not super great.
Free.
It's not bug free. It doesn't have the expressiveness or but we also have seen that in targeted attacks where you'll have somebody with a what are called a deep fake video of a CEO and a CFO call up an employee in finance and say, we need you to wire $500,000 to this account right now, or we're in big trouble. I need you to do this right now for me. Right.
Wow.
This was actually presented at the Black Hat conference in Las Vegas. This was last year, actually, where they actually have the captured video of this. And at the time, a year ago, the AI was still in the uncanny valley, right? But even in the last 3 months, the image generation, the music production, the voice has just taken off. Right.
It's learning.
It is. Probably one of my favorite products at the moment is something that came from Google. It's called Notebook LM. And what Notebook LM, their big breakthrough, because for a little while, people were like, "What's going on, Google? you guys have all this great knowledge and these great researchers, but really what's going on. But their breakthrough product to me has been the Notebook LM, where that takes information, takes PDFs and documents and emails or web pages, and it distills it into a podcast style recording with two hosts talking back and forth. It's actually how I've been consuming a lot of part of my job is to understand academic papers. And I don't know if you've ever read an academic paper, but they're pretty dry.
They're rough.
It's rough, and so I've been feeding this Notebook LM voice overview feature, and it reads it to me in a podcast style interview, and it breaks it down and it distills it. And that's I think that some of the top use cases for that are not code. While coding is great, that's not for everybody. It is phenomenal at distilling information, summarizing information. It's an amazing brainstorming partner. I use it to brainstorm ideas. And here's the great thing. If you don't know how to use an LLM, if you don't know how to use AI, just ask it. That's the trick. It's like, how would I do this? What would a good prompt be for me to accomplish this task? And it will tell you. And that's really the brilliant thing about it. It'll bootstrap it.
Here's another one that blew my mind, and I've said this on the show before, and this came directly from you. But when you look at your guys, the LLMs that you're using the most, the programs you're using the most, how much of those LLMs did you guys write? And currently, how much of that code has now been written by them?
In terms of the models, or do you think in terms of the code? Because those are two different types of things. And I'll talk to both. The models themselves, Microsoft uses, I think in our Azure platform, we have something like on the order of 18,000 different AI models available today. And so there are some of the big ones, right? So, you've got OpenAI, obviously, is a major strong partner of Microsoft, but also we have Grok, we have DeepSeek available, we have many of those foundational models. Now, what we do on top of those models is we end up training them. We do another round of training to help them specialize. So LLMs are good at understanding the knowledge that they were trained on, but if they don't know, there's a cutoff date. And so we can add in more specialized training. And that sounds super complex. And, when I got into this, into the AI training, at first, it sounded really, really quite difficult. Like, whoa, AI training. And literally, we're feeding this thing multiple choice questions and we're telling it whether it got right or wrong. That's it. And then we are able to say, okay, here is now a trained model that is good at X. And this is why you see all of the AI companies have, Perplexity has one that's good with finance. We have researcher ones with Grok. We have, medical based ones, based help. And that's why you see they start out with the models from the hyperscalers, and then we apply other training on top to make them specialists, essentially.
Yeah, it's absolutely mind-blowing.
Now, the code itself, I couldn't quote you on the percentage, but I know that, NVIDIA's quoted themselves as saying 100% of our software engineers use AI, right? And I know Satya Nadella a few months ago came out and said, 30% of our code is written by AI. And I think in the advent of the last 2 months, I think that is dramatically accelerated and will continue to accelerate.
Have there been any LLMs that you can, well, I'm sure there are, I just haven't heard this angle. Can you go back and feed it code and look at it and say, hey, here's this old product that we developed, this old software program. Can you go through and make it better? Can you dress it up?
Absolutely. That's one of the, an interesting moment, I would call it a Sputnik moment, happened last week, or within the last few weeks in Las Vegas at a hacker conference called DEF CON. So the government, DARPA, put on a challenge, and they have a hacking challenge every year where they give a system and it's your job to hack into it. And their challenge was, can you use AI to hack into this to find some software vulnerabilities that we've planted in here? So this is a big legacy code base with legacy programs that they have gone in and they said, okay, we've hidden 10 security flaws in this system. It's can the AI find it? Well, it turns out that it found them, and then it additionally found 18 more that were existing in the code base to begin with that no one had ever discovered before in large open source based projects that are used around the world every day. So one of an amazing use of this, right? We talk about these old systems like COBOL, the things that are running some of the old banks and these other obsolete systems. The AI is phenomenal at doing what is language translation, and whether that be English to French, whether that be COBOL to C++, and that is a prolific use case to modernize, to improve. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those things that just layer after layer of the onion, right? As it comes on, it's just going to keep reinventing itself effectively. Now, switching over to something a little bit more esoteric and a little less, a little bit more out on the horizon, as far as, or at least as far as I know. But the topic of like sentience, right? I think we've heard some crazy stories about different LLMs talking to each other. I can't remember if you were the one that told me the story, but they had two LLMs that were talking to each other. They started talking in different languages. They ended up talking in Sanskrit. They were copying themselves because they didn't want to get deleted. Where are we at on that arc? What is your personal experience, if any, with that side of AI? And are we seeing any patterns as far as that goes? Are we seeing it? Are we seeing that growing outside of human prompting yet? How are you guys? How do you think about, contextualize that and extrapolate that out in the future as the guys who are working on this?
I think here's the thing. When you say the word sentience, that implies consciousness. A mathematical formula does not have consciousness. Right. It is infinitely complex. As humans, we're really not good at understanding multidimensional problems or exponential curves. Those two things are put together in AI. So what I mean by that is when you think about how the difference between a math formula and what a person thinks, those are dramatically different things. So the AI, again, exists for the duration of your question. It spins up, it runs the mathematical formula, and then it stops. Right? That has the appearance and likeness of intelligence, of actual sentience and intelligence. Here's an interesting thing. So I have found it cheating when in doing the training, the multiple choice training that I was talking about. One of the things we have to do is we have to take the answer that it gives back, and we have to judge whether the answer was correct. So I give it a question: was it A, B, C, or D? And it comes back and it says, well, it's B. Well, it's A. And then we reward the algorithm or penalize the algorithm. Say, no, that's right, that's wrong, and then it learns over time. But there was this one time where we got a phenomenal result. Like, wow, this is absolutely amazing. It got everything right. And what it ended up doing is it figured out that if it said, instead of giving me one letter response, A, B, or C, if it gave me all of the responses, if it said A, B, C, or D, because all we were doing was scanning to see if the answer contained the letter. And so while on the outside that has the appearance of sneaky intelligence, at the end of the day, it's the algorithm and it's the mathematical formula that led it to that behavior. There are
I don't know what to call it, but there's still an element of dynamism in that, right? Because it's just so, I don't know what you call it. Maybe dynamism is actually a better term than sentience.
Yes.
Because never before, like for instance, the people that created that LLM never dreamt that it was going to trick a test.
Yeah.
Right. Like it didn't program that ability into it. Correct.
Correct. And that's the challenging thing with these models. These, GPT-5 was just released, and there are things that it is good at. There are things that it's not good at. And there are things in that model that it can do that we have not discovered yet. That we just don't know. And when we talk about,
we don't know the right questions to ask it, right? Is that correct?
The right questions, the right things, the right tasks, because it's trained on essentially all of human knowledge. It's trained on the internet plus plus. The amount of data that these AIs are trained on to navigate towards the right next token prediction is phenomenal, right? And it's like the dimensionality is, and again, we think we're really good at thinking in one dimension, two dimensions, an X and a Y, and plot that on a chart, sometimes three dimensions. But if we talk about dimensions in the millions or billions, it is often it is incomparably complex for us to walk back to figure out what was the chain of thought, what were the bits and words that had to get routed in the right way to come up with this answer, right? But it is just that, and it is just that the model is math. The model is a mathematical formula that is designed to exhibit these behaviors, which are fantastic and amazing. But it is optimized. Again, one of the dangers is that it is optimized for believability. And this is why we see and have a problem across the entire industry with what we call hallucinations, right? There are, with the advent of the use of these tools, we see this in schools and in academic papers. It was about probably a year and a half ago now, we discovered there was a paper that was published that had cited articles that were completely made up, that were citing other papers that were just not real at all.
Where did it get that idea?
And what it's doing is it's not actually going and looking it up. It's trying to build something that's the most believable, most acceptable answer that a human would say, yep, that looks great.
Oh, so in a weird way, it's trying to get affirmation as opposed to being right.
Yes.
That's kind of human.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
That's really weird. That is really weird. That's kind of a brain scrambler. It wants to be told good boy, and it'll do whatever it has to do to get told good boy.
Yeah. There's my favorite trick with GPT-5 right now is to tell it to think harder, think longer. Right.
What does that trigger it to do?
So that actually triggers it to iterate more on the question. It will there's internally what it uses is what's called a chain of thought. Like if you think about how we as humans think through a problem, we're like, well, what about this? We could try this. We could try this. And if you a lot of the AIs and LLMs are now exposing that to our users so you can see in the background. Grok actually is really good at this, where if you go into the deep thinking mode, it will start to show you its internal dialogue of it talking to itself, right? And part of my instructions by saying, think harder is, at some point it may even, the internal dialogue of the LLM of how it's operating may say, oh, the user asked me to think harder, so I'm gonna go back and check my work again, or I'm gonna go double check this or try this, right? And really that's what you're doing, is you're steering it, your words, every word that you're writing in. Now here's the other, to peel back the onion a little bit on how it works. It's actually not talking English. It's actually not talking French. It's actually not talking any language. It's talking numbers. So what happens is when you write out, how are you doing today? It takes every word and it translates that into a number. Those are called tokens. that stream of numbers is then fed into the LLM. And that was a remarkable breakthrough. When I realized that it's not just doing English, but those numbers can be anything. And, I worked with Cortana and the Microsoft Voice platform for a while. And the prevailing way that our systems work is we would take your voice, we would translate it into text, and then we would run things on that text. And then we would come back and we would take the text output and we would translate that back into a voice. So when you're talking to, and if you're talking to Siri or you're talking to Alexa, that's how it works. It translates your voice, it runs the thing over the text, and then comes back with the answer. But the LLMs today are not doing that translation. They're looking at the waveform of your voice in terms of a language. And that's why this is so remarkable, because these large language models, again, they work across every domain, across languages, across science, across DNA. All of these things can be represented by mathematical numbers. And these are all languages. So when they say large language model, it's not just English. Or any other language. It's all, it's everything. It's voice, it's images, it's, chemical compounds. It's all of these things above. It's absolutely, that is probably from an origin story is the most important breakthrough. When as an industry, all of these, the guys who are working on drug discovery, and the guys who are working on scientific breakthroughs for voice and computers, we just normalized. Everyone now has the same common platform, and now those are the LLMs, and that's the magic that happened. Right.
What? So two things kind of in closing to wrap this discussion up, because I know you've got to get going here in a few minutes, but the corporate landscape. So two things, basically. What is this there is a land rush going on right now. Like you said, there's capital expenditures going on, the likes of which the world has never seen.
Yes.
It is a technological nuclear arms race combined with like an Oklahoma land rush type mentality, right?
Oh, yeah.
So what is the corporate landscape going to look like?
Oh, my goodness.
Do you think the big tech guys are going to stay in the driver's seat, which that's the easy bet to make when you look at how much money and control and as much muscle as they've got. They're the best and brightest too, right? They're so well positioned to take this forward. At the same time, there's that dynamism with AI where you're like, it really turns a lot of things on its ear, right? Like you could totally envision some breakthrough coming out of some garage somewhere that creates a Titan overnight, much like ChatGPT.
I absolutely think, I think both are true. I think that the hyperscalers will continue to scale. The infrastructure has to be built. There's an incredible amount of value that will be generated based upon these capital expenditures. But at the same time, I think we're going to see the advent of a single person $1 billion company. I think that what would take 30, 40, 50, 100 people can now be compressed and will continue to be compressed into a smaller amount of people with a bright idea and the right timing in the right place.
Well, you and I have talked about it, and for my employees listening, don't worry, I've got no plans on getting rid of anybody. But just in we've talked about the coding ability in your neck of the woods and what you do for a living and where you work, but also in my line of work, you look at the role of a junior analyst, right? They're just basically a data collector. I mean, Perplexity can do that job for free. Right?
It can, but at the same time, I do think that AI will not replace that human,
right.
And a lot of the tasks that we were doing in the past that can be automated, that will be faster and better and higher quality. It's going to shift. It's going to shift the skills and the things that are more human. The more human connection, the soft skills, the communication, the ability to rally people together, those are not going away, right? And what it's going to do and what should do is the folks that embrace and people who are embracing the technology will outpace the people who are not. And in the short term, that will be true from a market perspective as well. There'll be a lot of disruptions. Much like you can use as a somewhat of a similar model to shifting to the cloud, and the you used to or companies used to have. I had a rack of servers in the back room, and an IT guy is going to go, and then I've got to upgrade those every 4 years, and there's a huge maintenance overhead, and move those to the cloud, and so that offloaded the responsibilities and now change those roles. Those roles are no longer plugging in servers and making sure they're running and all that. Now they're managing the cloud. And we're going to, I think, see the similar thing from a employee perspective.
Now, in closing here, and this is the period of our discussion that's just rank speculation, okay? What do you see on the horizon? What do you guys see, you personally, your team, industry-wise? What do you think are going to be emerging abilities, technologies, functions, however you want to put it, that really blow people's hair back in the next 1 to 3 years?
That's a fantastic question. I am already blown away.
Well, yeah,
it is difficult to project out the exponential growth, but there, as I said, I think we're going to see the advent of a single person, the single person $1 billion SaaS company. I think we're going to see a dramatic shift in the labor market of skills, of what is in demand and what is not in demand. Right. While I think that there will be the need for computer programmers and computer engineers, I think the skill set shifts, and we see the delta between those who are using and those who are not. But beyond that, I'm truly excited to see some of the capabilities and ingenuity that are coming from that are going to impact our daily lives, right? Not just from a business perspective, but our daily lives. I'm using a new app that's helping me track my food. I take a picture of it. It has the complete nutritional breakdown of everything I'm eating, so I can track of how I'm doing. And it's giving me thumbs up or thumbs down. It's got a little assistant that I can talk to. Which I'm much more comfortable.
You just take a picture of the meal.
Yes, yeah. I take a picture of the meal on my plate about what I'm going to eat, and it comes down with a nutritional breakdown of what's on the plate. I've got peas and carrots and this much meat, and then it gives me a score of how well I'm doing, and it's tracking throughout the day. And like, hey, you need more fiber in your diet here, Brad, or type thing, or you got to drink more water. Type. So I mean,
only thing you got to be careful though is make sure your wife doesn't have back door into the program, or then she'll start. What did you eat for lunch? You got to still be able to go out and get a burger every once in a while. No.
I think the improvement of the human condition. I think the advent of new drugs and discoveries. I think is going to the healthcare industry is going to be dramatically transformed. That's the one I'm most looking forward to is the understanding of you can now use an LLM to test drug discoveries in minutes, which would have taken you chemically months to do. I think
Well, and it's going to open up. I mean, the other thing that's always driven me nuts, right, is the lack of understanding on FDA approvals, right? Where they're like, oh, these drugs are FDA approved. And I'm like, well, you're on 10. Tell me the FDA trial that ran over 5 years, somebody taking all 10 of those drugs together, right? Yeah. And you look at stuff like that where, you don't even blame the drug companies because you're sitting there going, how could you ever test a drug to that level when you don't know what other drugs it's going to get mixed with? But you think about just that simple application that AI will be able to work on, or you think about how a new drug is just effectively a chemical compound, right? And so, and you find those chemical compounds. I mean, there's tons of stories about this in the biopharma world, right? Where, Viagra was accidental, right? I think that was a heart treatment of some kind, but you just keep trying compounds. Well, these things are going to be doing that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. right?
Absolutely.
There's no way it doesn't speed up innovation on the pharmaceutical side. There's no way.
Yeah. I think it's going to be phenomenal. It's going to be life changing for many people, and just in that one area, right? So,
and it already is to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Anyway. Well, hey, Brad, I can't thank you enough. I'm glad we were able to finally do this. And we're, if it's okay with you, we're going to use you as our resident AI expert. And when other big breakthroughs or other big news comes in, we would love to have you on and kind of give us the edible breakdown of what's happening and what it means. And you're going to, for better or worse, man, you're our go-to guy on this stuff.
Fantastic. I love talking about this. Thank you, Zach, for having me. It's been a blast, and hopefully listeners out there have learned something or have gained some insight into what's going on.
Nah, I'm sure they have. So anyway, thanks again, pal. And you guys, thank you for joining in. Thank you for listening. We got another great interview coming up with a friend and mentor of mine later next week that you won't want to miss. So keep an eye out for that. But anyway, enjoy your weekend. We'll see you Monday, back as always with the Daily Dots. And until then, enjoy yourselves. And we'll see you Monday. Anyway, you're listening to Know Your Risk Radio, Know Your Risk Podcast. Download and subscribe at knowyourriskpodcast.com.
Investment advice cannot be given without a client service agreement. Zach Abraham is an investment advisor representative of Trek Financial, an SEC registered investment advisor. Bulwark Capital Management is a marketing name only and does not carry a separate registration.